On the 29th of December 2022, various law enforcement agencies from across California were hunting down 44-year-old William Shae McKay, who had been spotted driving a vehicle by responding officers only moments before this footage was captured. It isn't clear as to where William was heading to, but police needed him in custody as soon as possible to answer for the crime he had just committed only a short while before the pursuit. Spoiler alert, he wouldn't make it to the station.
I've been seen shooting a handgun.
Please. Just DC around.
In the days after the death of William McKay, many in law enforcement began to question why he was even allowed on the streets in the first place. Taking one quick look over his criminal history, and it begins to paint a picture of who William really was, and it's hard to disagree with law enforcement. If we rewind the clock all the way back to the 9th of January 1999, William had took police on a high-speed pursuit across California, reaching speeds of 100 miles per hour on some roads. Several people were forced to swerve off the road to avoid being struck. Officers had attempted to stop his vehicle initially over a suspended license, but were nearly faced with a deadly gun battle when the car came to a stop. William had got out, threatened officers with a firearm, but they didn't initially engage with him. After several commands were given to drop the gun, he did, and was eventually charged. He received a 3-year sentence for assault with a firearm, driving with a suspended license, and a burglary offence that he was on bail for at the time of his arrest. With the offending falling under California's 3 strikes law, which imposes a 25-year to life sentence when someone racks up 3 violent or serious felonies, this meant that the 1999 incident would be strike 1 for William. Fast forwarding to November 16th, 2005, and William was a free man. But while out on parole, he would catch his second strike. In February of that same year, William, along with an accomplice who to this day has still yet to be caught, headed down to an apartment building in California in the search for a safe. An ex-girlfriend of his used to rent a room within the apartment, but had recently left. The other 2 occupants, a couple, a man and woman, were ultimately faced with a madman who would go above and beyond to get what he was looking for. On the day in question, William and his accomplice kicked down the door, attacked the couple, and proceeded to hit them with objects in the room. The male victim was strangled to the point where he lost consciousness, and his face was described by officers as unrecognizable. The female had been subjected to pillow smothering, which almost killed her, and her head was slammed off the desk multiple times. When the motive was made clear, the victims pointed William and his accomplice to the direction of the safe. But even after $3,700 had been taken, the beatings continued. When the pair finally had enough, they fled the scene with the cash and the victims' mobile phones, leaving both victims having to fight for their lives in hospital. Both victims would recover, and when police asked them if they knew who the perpetrator was, of course they did. It was William. They explained to police that William dated an ex-housemate, as you're aware. It wouldn't be too long before police would catch up with William, and he was eventually charged with first-degree robbery and 2 counts of assault by means likely to produce GBI. For this, he was sentenced to 13 years in state prison, but was paroled 2 years earlier on the 24th of April 2019. With the crime falling under California's 3 strikes law, this meant then that William was on his second strike. One more, and he was out. He'd be looking at an automatic 25 years to life in jail, even if the 3rd offence didn't necessarily carry that long of a sentence. Over the next 2 years or so, William kept his nose clean. Officially anyway, but would find himself facing that 3rd strike he was trying to avoid on March 29th, 2021. For this one then, we've got to go back to mid-March of that year, and Lisa Little, an acquaintance of William's, was asked by him to watch over his dogs at his property, as he had been locked up on some petty charges. They were petty enough that reports don't even state what they were. At some point during the house watch, Lisa had to do some running around and headed off out for the day. By the time she got back, the house had been burglarized. Saddened that she had let William down, she went to go and bail him out as a sorry for the house getting burgled on her watch. So that's exactly what she did, and then she headed off to carry on with her day. After all, she wouldn't need to watch the house anymore. Upon William's release, he reached out to Lisa. He wanted to discuss the burglary, to see if she had any information. What she didn't realise though is that deep down, William thought she was in on the burglary, and so it wasn't going to be a friendly chat, it was going to be reminiscent of 2005. When entering the property, she was met with an angry William. She of course denied the claims that she was in on the burglary, and then was met with a brutal beating. William proceeded to take her purse, credit cards, and mobile phone before duct taping her wrists and ankles together. Over the course of several days, she was beaten by William and his friends, whilst they spent the money that was on her credit cards. On March 27th, 2021, Lisa managed to loosen the duct tape and made a break for it. She was nearly caught in the process as a large chauffeur had been blocking the front door. However, she did manage to escape and knocked on several neighbours' homes until someone answered. Emergency services arrived at the scene soon after, but by then, William and his accomplices had fled. On March 29th, 2021, police attempted to stop a stolen vehicle in San Bernardino County. The occupants? None other than William, an accomplice, Abriana Valerie Gonzalez. She had also been present when Lisa was held against her own will. Surprise, surprise, it was only an attempted stop because, wouldn't you have known it, William took police on a 20-mile high-speed chase that went into the desert, but would eventually flee on foot as the gas ran out. The pair didn't make it far though, and they eventually found themselves surrounded by police. They weren't going to go down without a fight. As a canine approached, he was stabbed and nearly lost his life as the result. On a quick side note before we continue, the canine did survive the ordeal after he was flown to a nearby hospital, although it is thought he was close to death. Both William and Abriana would surrender. There was nowhere else to run. Abriana was charged only in relation to the stabbing of the canine, and she received a 3-year sentence for that. But for William, he was charged with false imprisonment, evading a peace officer, kidnapping, making criminal threats likely to result in death or GBI, and receiving stolen property. Now looking at 25 to life, he decided to represent himself in court when the trial swung around in October of 2021. He opted for a bench trial. In other words, the judge would decide on what charges he would be found guilty of. On November 8th, 2021, the judge found him guilty on all of the charges that were brought against him other than the kidnapping charge. He was then remanded into custody ahead of his sentencing hearing, but decided to get legal counsel on board. They got straight to work, asking for a new trial as the judge hadn't explained the difference between a jury trial and a bench trial to their client. They also pointed out that the star witness in the trial, Lisa, had herself been wanted by law enforcement for smuggling methamphetamine into the US, meaning she was an unreliable witness. An argument was put forward that the 25 to life sentence needed to be dismissed due to the length of time that had passed. So in March of 2022, given all the legal technicalities, the judge granted William bail for $500,000 until the matters were settled. However, this would turn out to be a grave mistake. If we fast forward the timeline to October of 2022, the 15th to be more specific, after posting bail, William had been detained by Fontana police deputies during a traffic stop. He was arrested on suspicion of transporting narcotics and possessing ammunition as a felon. Now you'd think, given the fact he was out on bail and potentially facing 25 to life, if everything was to move forward how the prosecution wanted it to, then William should have been remanded into custody. But believe it or not, he was released the following day. Ironically, he was summoned to court a week later in relation to the 25 to life sentencing, but didn't attend and decided to go on the run instead. Shocker.
Hold on, hey! I'm okay, are you okay? Oh my God.
What you're seeing on your screen is the aftermath of a shooting that took place on the 3900 block of Golden West Avenue in Riverside, California. The victim? Deputy Sheriff Isaiah Cordero, an 8-year veteran with the force. Sadly, on the 29th of December 2022, he was killed in the line of duty while doing a traffic stop on a vehicle. The occupant? None other than William McKay. Later on that same day, at 3:07 p.m., an officer from Beaumont Police Department spotted William's vehicle. The chase was on.
Next exit will be 2nd Street.
Crossing under the bridge on 6, approaching 2nd.
Cat 3, are you close? Just hit the center divider, smoke coming out of the tail end here.
Secondary pursuit package, get ready to bail over that wall if he runs. If we can have CHP stop the northbound traffic.
Cat 3, am I loud night? Just a pit maneuver. Truck is still going southbound very slow. Speeds through the center divider, moving all the way over to the right-hand side. About 15 miles per hour.
Early Aries, Brandon, handgun shooting.
Brandishing and shooting
Cat
handgun.
back up front, please.
Just 2 feet right under the bridge.
2 feet under the bridge.
Shots fired.
I've been seen shooting a handgun.
Please. Just DC right on the
Right under the bridge.
He's under the bridge.
Shots fired.
Shots fired.
I hope the hammer and the block all traffic. That's right where he's at.
After attempting to engage in a shootout with officers, William was pronounced dead after decades of serious offending. Many officials came out to condemn the judge's actions of allowing William to be back on the streets when there was an option to allow him to stay locked up. Had the judge done so, Deputy Cordero would probably still be with us today.